All right, folks, welcome in. Yankees Unloaded here. I'm Jake Ellenbogen. He is Gary Sheffield Jr. And the Yankees fell victim to defeat against the Pirates today. And we're going to get into it. I mean, you see the title there. We're not going to hold anything back because the starting pitching just simply is not good enough right now to win the AL, to win a World Series, to win the division. So, we'll get into it. Obviously, be sure to like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. But Gary, I'm glad to be back. I would have loved to see them win this game. That was a great comeback at the end. And I understand, this is an MLB season with 162 games. So people tend to go game by game and almost take it for granted when an offense is smoking hot and then has a bad game. And you start to see, the Twitter fingers going on. Oh, they just didn't show up today or whatever. It's like, yeah, but they've also been carrying this team for the most part through the first 9 games. So look, today we're going to touch on everything, but I think we really need to just dive right into this topic because aside from Max Fried and a little bit of Carlos Rodon, the Yankees do not have starting pitching that you could even feel confident having them go 5 innings in. So let's discuss it because they got a Detroit matchup. All the games are early, Gary. I think they're 3 and 4 o'clock to avoid the snow that they're getting. No idea why there's snow in April, but
I don't know why everyone doesn't have a dome at this point in this sport. I don't get it. I have no idea. We deal with weather every year. This is not a 2025 issue. So yeah, I digress. Go ahead.
No, it's wild, but no, I'm excited to talk about it because I feel like we've talked about it on the surface, but it's starting to rear its ugly head, man. You saw it today. Will Warren just simply did not pitch well enough. And I want to make note, exactly what I told you off air. 4 innings, 4 earned runs, 6 hits. I think it's very easy for somebody to look at 4 runs and think, it's not a big deal. But then you had, come back, to me, and I agreed with you, of course, and kind of what I was saying. But to kind of really paint the full picture, you're like, okay, well, that's all fine and dandy. But when you bring in, guys in the bullpen and you ask them to go 1 inning and they each give up a run, well, now you just gave up 9 runs in a 9-inning game. So it really does kind of put it in perspective. A run an inning is bad. It's not, 4 runs is a little bit, that's doable with this offense. That's not ever how we should look at it. And Will Warren just didn't get it done today, and it put the Yankees in a bad spot.
Yeah, it's creating a situation where it's not sustainable. And I think most of our audience understood this. I think this is clear as day. The Yankees aren't going to score 12 runs a night. It just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen for any team in baseball. But having said this, when you look at the Yankees rotation, I tend to look at stuff. And obviously the injuries are what they are. Luis Gil, significant lat issue, 60-day IL. Garrett Cole, Tommy John, gone for the season. Clark Schmidt working his way back. And obviously, they talk about Clark Schmidt like he's a 3-starter for this team. I completely disagree. I think Clark Schmidt is the second best actual arm on this roster. I think when you talk about stuff, you see 97, 98. You watch today's game with Will Warren. Will Warren, yeah, he was working a nice changeup. I thought his sweeper looked pretty good for the couple innings that obviously he was out there. First 2 times through the rotation, through the lineup, which you brought up. But when you start going the 3rd time through the lineup and you have a 91 mile-an-hour 4-seam fastball and you miss location, I don't know what other result our audience thinks is going to happen. I would assume they expect damage. It's damage is what you got, okay? And we saw this with Carlos Rodon. He went out there with short sleeves on. He was throwing 91, 92. Maybe he got up to 93 miles an hour, missing location consistently with a 4-seam fastball. 4-seam fastballs in the middle of the plate are going to be damage, period, in this sport. It does not change. It's always been this way. And especially there's some pitchers where you say he can get away with a low 90s fastball at the top of the zone. It more has to do, we saw it Nestor Cortez these past couple years, high spin rate players. Will Warren is not one of those players. He's one of the players that's going to have to locate these pitches consistently if he wants to get guys out on the big league level. You look at our rotation, you see Rodon, he can't miss location. It's home run or it's consistent, right? He misses location, he doesn't, ball's going out of the ballpark. Max Fried is the one arm and Clark Schmidt where you say they have the stuff to get around missing location from time to time. The rest of these guys, Carrasco, Warren, Stroman, right? These guys missing location, even a Luis Heel, if they miss, it is out of the ballpark, to the point where Aaron Boone last year said, do all of our mistakes have to leave the yard? Well, when you don't throw high 90s, they are going to. And I'm just here to tell you guys, at this point, I would say the sirens should be going off. When you look at the standings, you should be thrilled. We're 6-3. Lineup's been fantastic. I have no remixes to offer about this group. But what I will say, the Yankees have surrendered the second most runs in the division. Their lineup has essentially put a Band-Aid on a short-term problem. Is this a long-term problem? We're going to find out the version of Clark Schmidt that we get when he comes back from the IL. If he doesn't look like the same Clark Schmidt, we're going to have to ask ourselves, is Marcus Stroman, Will Warren, and Carlos Rodon and Max Fried, is that group enough? Is that strong enough for this Yankees team to win a division?
Yeah, I think it's actually kind of funny, and I brought this up, as far as Will Warren's concerned. I brought this up because I'm a huge Clark Schmidt fan, but I remember being very vocal about his lack of ability to get through 3 times through the order, which was really holding him back from taking that next step. And then as I brought up, it's like after he got hurt, he came back and he was able to do that, right? It was something that he had to work on. But again, you bring up stuff, and I'll defend him to a degree, Will Warren, that I don't think his stuff is bad, but he doesn't have Clark Schmidt stuff to kind of get him by. And today, I thought was a really good example of him having, you talk about kind of moving up the rungs, right? And just mentioning how Clark Schmidt couldn't get to that last level where you get past, going through 3 times through the order, you don't get crushed. He's having a hard time getting through the second time through the order. Yes. So that's another, jump he has to make. And some people will say, well, then he shouldn't be in the majors. I disagree with that, because obviously you could have said, well, yeah, I guess Clark Schmidt's not a good pitcher if he can't get through the 3rd time. Well, they worked on it, and he did. So it's not to say Will Warren can't do it, but right now, Gary, I sense a real issue with that. He retired 8 straight to start the game, looked really good, and then Connor Falefa walks, and after that, it's like as soon as he gets anybody on base, that's an issue. But as soon as he gets into the second time through the order, listen to this. You got Hayes at the top, singles to left, Falefa to second. Then you got Reynolds. Brian Reynolds comes up. He doubles. He scores 2 there, right? Then Cruz singles. Reynolds is at 3rd. Then he strikes out Bart. So you get out of the inning only giving up 2, but in a game like today where you see the way the offense is going, for whatever reason, they could not hit Heaney today. Speaking of a lack of velocity, Heaney doesn't throw very hard, right?
No.
So he was locating well and really giving them fits. So then you come back, bottom of the 4th, right? You get McCutchen out. And then Valdez, he triples. So Pham now is going to drive him in, just like Pham did to win the game, with a sacrifice fly. So now it's 3-1. And now you've given up another run. So then Frazier comes up. He gets a single. Then IKF, who gave him fits, working the count and then getting on base the first time up, he doubles. Then he strikes out Hayes to get out of that, but he didn't get out of it. He gave up 4. So that's the thing, is that we're seeing a pitcher, because that was, by the way, his last batter. Hedrick came out in the bottom of the 5th. But that's what we're seeing, man. And Boone didn't have a choice. If this game was 9-4, like they got off to an amazing start, the offense just continued to do what they're doing, okay, maybe you just keep him in there, see if he can work through, because this is good experience, right? These are reps. Boone's trying to win baseball games. He can't sit there and handhold. So that's what I really see, Gary. When I look at this, I mean, he's having a really hard time getting through the second time through the order. And to me, if he can't get over this step, you want to wonder why these guys end up in the bullpen. They end up being long relievers. These are failed starting pitchers. I feel like a lot of people don't get that. There's not a guy who's just developing to be a bullpen pitcher.
This is what happens.
Right. Yeah. This is what happens when you can't cut it as a starter. And so unfortunately, Will Warren now has to work on this, because if he can't get over the hump, he's looking at being a long reliever for the rest of his career if he can't get past this.
Yeah, and I want to bring something up. I saw a comment in our comments section where something I actually agree with, and I want to make sure that what we're saying is clear. Now, in the short term, this comment is correct. It says that we lost the game because we couldn't score one run in the 10th or 11th. The hitting was the problem. Now, let me say this about today's game. Now, there were two situations. We had an at-bat with Jazz Chisholm in the top of the 10th, third and first with one out. In this situation, we should be scoring a run. And if the ball is not going into the outfield for a sacrifice fly, you should have the expectation a ball should be on the ground. Jazz Chisholm can run. More than likely, a ball on the ground with Jazz's speed is a run for the Yankees. Now, we miss on that opportunity, right? Weak pop-up in the infield. Now there's two outs. Hard contact from Anthony Volpe doesn't equate to runs. Now, Austin Wells comes up multiple times in this game with actually nobody out, man on second base, man on third base, and he strikes out both times. Now, he had a hit today. I'm not trying to pick on the guy, but to this person's point, we are talking about the Yankees' failed execution late in this game. You fast forward to the game-winning hit, right? Valdez comes up, fails to get the runner from second to third base. There is now one out in extra innings. Well, they have Jack Sawinski steal third base. It changes the game. Now a Tommy Pham fly ball with the outfield in wins the game. So the team who executed won this game. But the overall point is that our staff is not able to go an inning per run. You can't go out there and give us 4 innings, giving up 4, and then look at the offense and say, well, by the end, we were very close. We're talking about big picture here. Big picture, your team is going to have to be able to get outs with your starting rotation. There are hardly any teams that win when it matters. When you're talking about going through April, going through July, going through August, where you say, we don't really trust our rotation, but we'll throw some bullpen guys out there and keep the game close so our offense can win. How many teams do you know of that win when it matters in that fashion? Our point is that this has to improve. If it doesn't improve, you may win tonight's game because your offense and Austin Wells and maybe a Jazz Chisholm come through today. But you fast forward a month, 2 months from now, these guys aren't getting any more talented. These guys can execute better down the stretch. We're not worried about that. We're worried about the talent. Can this talent translate to results? So far, it hasn't, and it's something we're willing to provide.
Yeah, I totally understand not being okay in the grand scheme of things, right? But one game, of course, that is a big reason why they lost. I'm not willing to go to the point of the offense is and I get it, it's frustration, they're this, they're that, whatever. I actually do want to give them credit because once again, Judge didn't step up today. He just missed a home run, but he had kind of a down day for Judge. Yeah. And what did we talk about? Well, bottom of the order once again. And you go back to the top of the 9th, and this is last licks. Jazz doesn't have it. He strikes out swinging. Then Volpe ends up reaching on an infield single, right? It probably would have gone in the outfield. Shortstop had to make kind of a diving stab at it to keep him in front of him. Point being, he gets on. 1 out. Then Austin Wells push bunts. And honestly, if it not for an incredible play at third, he's probably safe. But he's out by half a step. So now it's 2 outs, but he also got Volpe over to second. 2 outs, you're down 4-1, right? Then Jason Dominguez on the right side walks, which was great. Great at bat. And then Oswald Peraza, who's had a rough day. He's had some really kind of back and forth at bats where he was ahead in the count and then kind of threw it away. He just laces one down the third base line, doubles, and scores Volpe and Dominguez. So in that moment now, he scores Volpe, Dominguez goes to third. So now it's 4-2. So what that does now is, even though you have 2 outs, you're bringing the tying run or the winning run to the plate, the go-ahead run rather, in Trent Gisham, who's knocking the cover off the ball. So Grisham comes up and has a nice at-bat and then singles to right. And, of course, Dominguez scores and Peraza scores because they're both athletic. Now it's a 4-4 ball game. And Goldschmidt almost beats out the grounder. But now what they've done is you took 8 innings where you couldn't hit at all. And the guys who had to step up, was it the heart of the order? No, it was the bottom of the order. And these guys made this even something to talk about. Because, Gary, this podcast was looking at being a 25-minute podcast if they didn't do something in the 9th inning.
It looked like an easy L. I mean, let's be real. If you looked at the score, we were being completely dominated. And, of course, you love to see this type of fight. Because I could tell you right now, maybe not last year. I was pretty pleased with the fight last year. I thought they showed a different character in that locker room. But years prior, we were down 4-0 going into the 8th. It's usually a shutout. We just lay right down. We're not doing that right now. And the bottom of the lineup has a major role in that. Obviously, you're seeing Cody Bellinger struggle. Luis Soto with the super chat. Thank you, Luis, for supporting our channel. Said Bellinger swinging on that 3-1 killed us. Yeah, there were some situations where the Yankees failed to execute. And while that's something situationally that we can point to that could have been better, we have to look at the group and say, is this offense doing its job? If we said we're going to score 4 runs on the road against Pittsburgh, is that going to keep us in a game with an opportunity to win on the road? I would say yes. Given what we should be doing with our rotation, this should be enough. Would you like to score more? Sure. And to Luis's point, if you take some of these failed executions out of the mix, we do score more. And that's what we've been doing, overall for this season. And Ed W brings up a great point because I want to tailor this into confidence with Will Warren. Now, Warren pitched right after, guys, of the walk, avoiding attacking the zone until 3-2. But twice when he attacked 3-2, he K'd the hitter. It's a maturity issue he needs to solve. Schmidt had the same issues that he did. Now, having said this, we have to remember what was on the broadcast from Yes Network. Michael Kay he honestly talked for an inning or two, essentially talking about, well, Will Warren doesn't necessarily have the confidence that you'd like to see. It's something that he can develop. We've seen players do this. Ed W is mentioning that we've seen it from Schmidt. That is absolutely right. It's something, Jake, that you brought up. He can't get through a lineup twice. He struggles through the 3rd time in the lineup. That's all confidence. That's all it is. Once you do it once or twice, you can do it later on. So having said this, yes, when you get to 1-2, 2-2, 0-2, you need to be going after hitters and putting them away. Otherwise, you're looking at a Marcus Stroman-like situation where you're ending up out of games, having gone through 3 1/3, 4 innings of work. And that's a problem because all you're doing by showing that lack of confidence and that crack in the armor is coming off the mound fast and throwing our bullpen essentially just under the gun. And we're putting a lot of pressure on that group. So to Ed's point, you need to show confidence, go after hitters. And if you trust your changeup, you trust your sweeper, which he had a good one today. Both of those pitches were working. You need to trust those pitches and be around the zone and put some hitters away. I have faith that he can do that, but he's going to have to show it to us.
What's such a bummer about today, and I agree with Ed, and I also agree with Luis, so I wanted to make sure on that one too. Bellinger, he never swings at that. Like, that was surprising. That was a clear ball 4. But I wanted to, touch on the bullpen because I'm starting to see the bullpen is starting to get some confidence here. As a whole, they're starting to pitch a lot better. And I think that deserves to be talked about because, Hedrick today, who was sent down, and, I feel bad for the Yankees admin on Twitter because everyone's like, what the hell are you doing? He just struck out 4 and 2.
I know, the poor guy, right? Yeah.
Well, there's a reason for it. I'm going to explain it. Hedrick now pitched twice in the last 3 days.
That's right.
They now, because again, and this all comes back to the title of this video, the Yankees pitching is a disaster. It's not the Yankees pitching as a whole because the bullpen did their job today. And the bullpen has been doing their job as of fairly recent, although they were also an issue not that long ago. The issue is that when the starting pitchers don't give you length, that's what happens. Now Hedrick needs to pitch 2 innings, and Gomez has to pitch 2 innings, and Weaver has to pitch. You had 3 bullpen guys pitch 2 innings a pop. So that's normally not, conducive to winning baseball, but they got through it with no pain, right? They had some walks. They also had 7 strikeouts. So the point I'm making here is that Hedrick, the reason why he got sent down is because, one, he still has some options. I don't know if I'd be using him right now, but I do understand this. He has some options. So they set him down, and they're actually going to be re-signing Adam Ottavino, from what it sounds like. So I know that they had DFA'd him. He asked for free agency, obviously, because Adam Ottavino at this point in his career doesn't want to be playing AAA baseball. But I agree with it because, unfortunately, the starting pitching put the Yankees in a tough spot where, yeah, he's not going to pitch tomorrow. Okay? He's not going to. Hedrick has already pitched way too much, and this bullpen is tired, and they need another guy. And so, unfortunately, Ottavino seems like he's going to be the guy that keeps getting signed and cut and signed and cut. But this is the name of the game. I mean, you got to make sometimes you really have to make these strategic moves. And I actually agreed with this one for everything except one thing I don't agree with. Pablo Reyes is still on this roster, and I don't know why.
Yeah, I don't get it. I actually wanted to bring up a question for you because obviously, surely our audience wants to know, well, I understand you guys can talk about the rotation maybe not doing their jobs, but where are the solutions? Like, what are we offering? What's the point in all this? And I think the real question is Carlos Carrasco on this roster and Marcus Stroman, who obviously they tried to trade in January, are they on this roster simply because Clark Schmidt is injured, Luis Gil is injured? Or what is the solution here going forward? Because you have to imagine, right? These guys, as of today, are being used as a Band-Aid until Gil, no Cole because Tommy John, and Schmidt return. What does this rotation look like, in our opinion? Is it enough with Schmidt and Gil? Because that's really what we're looking at. Obviously, from what we've seen, this lineup can help carry the show based on what we're doing 1 through 9. Maybe not today in our execution. Obviously, we're a bit flawed today. We made some key mistakes, especially in the winning innings. But I will say, I feel that group may be able to hold the line just enough for these two to return and make an impact. Because I could tell you guys right now, the difference between a start from Marcus Stroman and Will Warren, and to be honest, we've seen Will Warren in some mismatches, right? We saw it with Corbin Burns. Now, the difference of Clark Schmidt's talent and Luis Gil, it's drastic, okay? It is. So the question is that enough, or is this going to be an issue that Brian Cashman has to be attentive to when you get to the deadline? That's going to be the question. Are we in a position where if we show up to a postseason series and you see that Max Fried is starting game 1 or Clark Schmidt is starting game 2, Rodon is your game 3 starter, how confident are you in this rotation? I'm just going to give you my opinion straight, to be quite honest with you. I look at this team and I think their rotation is good enough to say it's not a problem. And the offense is really going to have to be the strength of this roster. Now, I don't love coming into a postseason, or I know we're not there yet, but if we're going to be, I don't love coming into a postseason saying I don't love my game 2 starter. I don't love my game 3 starter. I don't like that idea. I don't. And having looked at this roster, I don't think this is a bad group. I think we're an arm short, even if healthy. I think we're an arm short. Our 4 and 5 is weak enough to me where I feel like they're getting us really out of sorts, and you come out of the game in the 3rd or 4th inning, you're putting us in a bad position. You just are. There's a reason that we tried to trade some of these guys, hint Marcus Stroman, right? There's a reason for this. They're somewhat valuable. They keep us on the field right now, but I think this is a problem that Brian Cashman is going to have to attend to. I don't think he's just going to be able to wait this out.
Now, I know I'm opening up a can of worms here, but this is where I'm like, are we really sure Trevor Bauer couldn't help out this team right now? And I'm just being honest with you. Like, I like when I watch, this starting pitching group, it's like you have Carlos Carrasco, who's had like a 5 ERA the last 2 years, and he's one of your like options. Like, he's one of the decisions that you've made. Like, we'd rather go this direction than give this guy an opportunity. And It just, that is where it kind of annoys me because, Gary, looking at the 40-man roster, unfortunately, I hate to break it to some of you guys because I know last year not everybody was a huge Will Warren fan, but at least there's something that it kind of sends a message when you have a 40-man roster guy that could potentially start, Gary, right? Like Will Warren might not have been everybody's cup of tea, but you're like, oh, a AAA guy that could start this year. There's not another starting pitcher on the 40-man roster. Now that can change. They could obviously make a mover, but they don't have anybody, in my opinion, Gary, in AAA that's like ready to be like Will Warren. They don't have a Clark Schmidt. They don't have a Luis Heel, a guy that's up and coming. And so that's the thing, is the timeline doesn't really add up. You have Ben Hess and you have Cunningham, who pitched really well today, but they're nowhere near getting into the big leagues. So this is the issue that they have. And this actually coincides exactly with your point, is that I do believe they're going to end up having to trade for somebody, because it's not going to be all fine and dandy when you have Heel and Clark back, right? You still need another guy. It's why the whole Cody Poteet becoming available thing, it's why we talked about it. I actually think, the grand scheme of things, that would have made a ton of sense. Right now, it's like you don't have that. The guys that are in the minors that are on the 40-man roster include Hedrick, who we just talked about, pitched well. He's a bullpen guy. Yeri De Los Santos, a little surprised he didn't make the roster. And Michael Arias. Neither of those guys are starting pitching. So that's the thing, man. I think they are kind of, in the way that they went about doing all of this, they're kind of telling us how they feel. Now, there's one guy in particular that could potentially have some Will Warren-esque upside, like we talked about last year. And that is Clayton Beeter, who's on the IL. I don't know what to make of that, Gary. I don't know if they look at him. He's starting in the minors last year before he goes down with the injury. So I don't know if they were trying to like ramp him up and turn him into a starter. At one point, it looked like he was a reliever.
I think if
that's the case,
yeah,
then that is their kind of, that's what they're waiting on, in addition to Heel and Clark. But I would have to imagine they acquire somebody, because it's just, they don't have enough right now. And that's why I even brought him up, because like you look at this, I mean, it's not necessarily the bullpen like we keep talking about. They're banged up, but I mean, who else is really going to be in this bullpen that we're talking about? I mean, Scott Efros, when he comes back, he hasn't done enough to make this bullpen, in my opinion.
No,
Jake Cousins is on the 60-day IL. JT Brubaker, I've never seen him throw anything in a Yankee uniform, so
he doesn't exist.
He does not exist.
He's the Brett, whatever Rortvet. Ben.
Oh yeah.
And
then you have Ian Hamilton, who like at one point looked like the best bullpen pitcher, and then he fell off a cliff, and he's had a hard time staying healthy. And then you have Johnny Lowe, who's literally Mr. Injury. Like, guy has some of the best stuff you'll ever see out of the pen, but you might have him for 5 games, fall in love with him, and then he's hurt again. So I don't really think necessarily it's we're waiting for the bullpen. I think this is more so a starting pitching thing. They can find guys. There are guys on rosters, as I've said in other episodes, there are guys on rosters right now that are pitching for another team that are going to fall out of favor with that team, and they will end up on the Yankees and be a part of this story. That is how the Yankee bullpen works. It's not a bullpen issue. It is a starting pitcher issue, and that's why we're talking about it.
Yeah, this feels a lot like the third base situation last year. Now, obviously, Jazz Chisholm was not in the mix. I want to remind everybody, we traded for Jazz Chisholm, okay? And when Jazz came to this team, Gleyber Torres said, well, I'm a second baseman. Obviously, ridiculous thing to say, but he stayed at second base, didn't really do it well, but he turned it on with the bat, and we said, hey, Jazz, you're going to go over to third base. Well, before that, the Yankees had a couple of weeks of really strong play at third base, right, by way of Cabrera. Yeah. And then they yanked him off the field and threw in DJ LeMahieu, where he got hurt soon after, but there was hardly any performance there. And by the time we threw another player out there, we weren't getting anything from anyone at the position. So Brian Cashman had to come in and say, this is a Band-Aid at this position. We need a solution. They went and got Jazz. We saw our solution. We saw our results. We saw our wins. We went to the World Series, obviously for other reasons as well, but that was another reason that helped us get there. Now you fast forward to this year, it seems like that Band-Aid is in the rotation. Now, obviously, to Brian Cashman's credit, and this is not necessarily his fault, Garrett Cole, I mean, yeah, maybe some people thought, okay, he could potentially be gone for the season. We know he's kind of teetering there, but you're paying $36 million for this player. You're hoping he's there. He ended up not being. Well, Luis Heel was supposed to be in this rotation. He's now not, okay, till around the All-Star break. That's a problem, okay? And the Yankees now know, well, we have a decision to make. Are we going to go put a Band-Aid on it right now by way of going high prized arm, right? You're talking Blake Snell. You're talking some of the guys that were actually out there. Now, not heel, but the point is the Yankees had a choice. Do we fix this now or do we throw out a Stroman? Super chat from Ed W says, what are their plans for Stroman's 100-inning cliff? It's to put a Band-Aid. They're going to use him as a Band-Aid until the deadline. That's the solution. They're not worried about the 150 inning. And you know why you shouldn't be? Because if you look at Marcus Stroman's innings, I'm going to read them. Okay. And this is no opinion. In 2022 with Chicago, he threw 138 and 2/3 innings. In 2023, he was an all-star. He threw 136 and 2/3 innings. Okay. And to which I said, why did we bring in this player at $18.5 million if you guys are anticipating him to throw big innings? Now, mind you, I was wrong. He had an outlier 2024 in terms of innings. It went 154 and 2/3 innings. Do you expect the 34-year-old Marcus Stroman to pitch 150 plus innings? I don't. Why? Because the majority of his seasons since the 2021 season that he had with the Mets were less than that. So I'm not worried about it. I'm just not. I'm not worried about, to be honest with you, any opt-in. If the Yankees don't want him to get to that point, they'll just take him off the field. That's what I think. So as far as what I care about, I care if we go onto the mound with a player. Does this guy have the talent to get us to the 5th inning, a quality start, and keep us in the game? I don't want you to tell me, well, he went 4 innings, but he only gave up 3, and then the offense can sort of save it there at the end. It's not a sustainable way to win baseball games. There's a reason that in 100 years of baseball, all of our dads and our grandpas cared about ERA, right? It's because it's inherently understood that if you have a lower ERA, it means you're not giving up a run an inning. That's what that means. So we want Will Warren to play well. I want Marcus Stroman to pitch well. Of course I do, right? I want to see these guys develop and have the confidence to where they can walk off the mound and Aaron Boone's taking that baseball in the 5th or 6th inning. And you're saying that was a job well done. Why wouldn't we want that? Of course we do. But when they don't consistently over a 2-week stretch, I'm going to say perhaps it's not an issue right now because of what the offense is doing in overall execution, but it's not going to look like this all season. This is historic. So when the offense becomes normal, when you wake up tomorrow and the offense gives you 4 runs, are we going to blame the offense because they couldn't score 6 or 7 runs to win? That's not how winning baseball is done. So my expectation is that the Yankees are going to have to say, is this rotation good enough in the short term? Is it good enough in the long term? And my understanding of what they're going to do based on what they did this offseason is they're going to just hold on and pray that this offense can do just enough to where they have time to make a big deal to help this team.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I think they kind of told us that when Kyle Gibson was available, who's the best, guy remaining, not saying he was amazing, but 4.24 ERA, not bad for being like your 7th starting pitcher on the roster. Right. And the Orioles scooped him. He was available for the whole time, and people were like, "Oh, shouldn't the Yankees try and pick him up? I mean, he's better than Carrasco."
Well, they got Poteet too.
Yeah, there was Poteet as well.
Yeah.
So they didn't pick him up, and now both guys are on the Orioles. So, it's interesting, but I think it definitely tells us that they have a plan, and they're looking at this kind of like how I looked at it. I mean, I do think you kind of have to let things play out. They got off to a rough start. Okay, well, turn it around. And we're starting to see slowly but surely Max Fried from game 1 to game 2 looked like a different pitcher, right? So
yes, he did.
The hope is that, you're getting some of those the rust, the cobwebs, whatever. You're starting to rev things up. Okay. If Clark Schmidt comes out and he looks dominant, well, he's had time to kind of, calm things down, really work on that, arm and the fatigue and everything. But they definitely need him. I'm not going to sit here and say they don't. I mean, this team could not go another month without Clark Schmidt. So luckily, they're expected to get him 9 to 10 days from now. And that will be a day to celebrate because he is huge for their success, I believe. And then I would also say this. If you're running into the position, because like I said, I defended what they did today. I liked what they did today, moving Hedrick down, signing, Ottavino because of the bullpen thing. But you know why they have to do that? Because they're keeping 13 batters on the roster, and one of them just isn't doing anything. It's like everybody on this team is hitting.
Are we talking about Reyes?
Well, I just don't know why he's on the roster. Because it's not just like I'm being a jerk. He takes up a spot from one of these guys. So you could bring up, there are 2 bullpen guys that were on the roster bubble that I named. The Arias and Yeri De Los Santos, I think was his name. Those 2 guys were like neck and neck on the roster bubble, and they missed it. And you kept Reyes, but like nobody wants him playing over, Peraza. So at this point, he's just kind of taking up a spot where if you've gotten to the point where you need to send a guy down so you can sign a guy for your bullpen because you're running out of arms, maybe take the decision and say, you know what, we can't be a full-on balanced 26-man roster right now. We need to just focus. Our offense is great. Let's go with 12 hitters, and let's have 14 pitchers. It's not a hard concept.
So that extra roster spot is per se the Band-Aid that you're talking about.
Yeah. I think that's something that they should be looking at. Because again, if Reyes was hitting well, okay. Reyes, when he's been in there, has done nothing. On an offense where everyone is hitting. Everyone. It just doesn't look good. And
he's on the roster because of what he did in spring training. So let's be clear. That's why he's here. And what's interesting about that, he's not the first player we've seen just be sensational in spring training and then just show up to the regular season and be mediocre or less than.
You're talking about a certain catcher that used to bomb home runs?
A certain catcher that used to just bomb against left-handed pitching. Now, there's no reason to just write off everything you see in spring training. Obviously, you saw Will Warren. He was working on a sweeper. He's working on his changeup. And people said, well, I'm excited about what he's going to do in 2025. Has he necessarily gotten the results? No. But you can see, if you watch these games, progression with some of those pitches. So spring training is not useless. But to just suggest, oh, he hit the ball hard all spring training, or he was hitting home runs and driving in runs in spring training. And so you just draw the conclusion that the ball is leaving the ballpark. So it must mean that he can just show up to the big leagues and do the same thing. No. If I look at both sides of our roster in terms of pitching, in terms of what we do with our hitting, right? Maybe even our bullpen to starters, I can easily tell you, Jake, easily. And I think anybody who watches our show could say the same thing. The struggling group right now is the arms. You can say what you want about Cody Bellinger struggling with the back or his back, whatever the situation is offensively, lack of execution today, getting guys from second to third with less than 2 outs. You can bring up all of it. But this group's not struggling offensively. There's no reason to nitpick these certain situations. I just wanted to bring them up. But if you're talking about what to do with our extra roster spot, are we being serious? This is an easy solution. Yeah. It's an easy solution. And then guess what? If you use the extra roster spot for an arm and you're still not getting anybody out, what does that tell you? It tells you we need to make a deal. So that's where I'm at. But I do want to transition into something more positive because I want to talk about one player offensively. I do. And I want to talk about Trent Gisham because this guy, what's actually funny about him, he is the streakiest player alive. He really is. And the interesting part about this player, if you look at his Baseball Savant page, it's the opposite of what you would expect to see. If I told you, what are you expecting out of Trent Gisham as we come into this year? They'd say, a lot of blue. He's probably going to pop a couple random homers that are going to tie a couple games. He's going to play good defense. He's going to make a lackadaisical error in the outfield. But overall, he's a pretty solid defender that's going to struggle offensively. He is the opposite of that. He is. Baseball Savant says his defense right now is below average. He's Barry Bonds. He's John Dowd right now.
John Dowd.
455. His ops is almost 1,500. And I know that this is not sustainable. None of us think this is. But I will tell you guys this. These type of performances, we're going to forget about them. I promise you. Trent Gisham, by the end of the season, is going to be hitting 226. And we're going to be sitting there staring 90 wins right in the face. None of us are going to be thinking about Trent Grisham's start. But I tell you what, this reminds me a lot of the start last year from Cabrera at third base. It just does. It just does. And sometimes there's value in an outlier for a couple weeks. There just is. So
it reminds me of Matt Carpenter.
What is this? Well, I have no idea what I'm watching. He's going Oppo. He's pulling balls. Come on.
Yeah, it's better than Carpenter because people look at Carpenter and it was like, and that was amazing. It was a lot of fun, but it was a lot of home runs, right? He's doing the situational things. He's also not like just a DH. Like this guy's going out there and playing in the field and, helping this team. I think somebody had, not that I care about F-War, literally do not give a rippy doodah about F-War, but they said that he already has a higher rating than, what's his face last year? Left fielder.
Verdugo?
Yeah, the entire year
Verdugo didn't do Dookie all year.
Yeah, he already has a higher value than Verdugo.
Yeah, okay, so we have a super chat. Luis Soto, we appreciate the 5. Thank you for supporting our channel. Luis. Says Dylan Cease is a free agent next year. He can't see San Diego trading him. I completely agree. They are looking good. Any chance we can trade for Sandy Alcantara? Now, I do think, given what Miami's done these past couple of years when it comes to Alcantara, I do think there's an opportunity, right, to make a deal for this arm. Obviously, we've made deals with them before. They've also given away and Luis Arias, just thrown them to different teams. We've seen that happen before. But also, it seemed like San Diego this offseason was going a different direction, right? They're still a very good team. They probably should have beat the Dodgers in the postseason. But I will say this. Based on the way things are bouncing in San Diego, you're clearly seeing them win. They had a bad series this weekend. But I will say, San Diego seems to be back on the horse. They do. And I wouldn't count on players that are approaching free agency. I can see San Diego engaging in a long-term marriage with Dylan Cease. He's that good. And if for those of you who don't watch this guy, and I understand it's a West Coast team, but I'm here on the West Coast. I watch this player. Okay. My mom's in the chat. She watches this player. And when you watch Dylan Cease pitch, he's big time. He's an ace. That's what aces do. He takes the mound. He's giving you 180 plus innings. He's missing bats. I don't see him being available or even a possibility for the Yankees. Now, if he reaches free agency, sure. I'm sure the Yankees are going to be looking his way. But as far as what the Yankees should be looking for in terms of what this super chat is about, can we make a trade for a big arm? I don't know. What I would say, it's going to become more clear around July, right? It's going to become more clear when we start getting to the All-Star break and guys start becoming available because teams that thought they were contenders are no longer contenders. We're going to find out really quickly, and that's when it's going to be fun.
You know what I'm keeping my eyes on?
Who?
I know everyone's talking about Alcantara because he's the biggest name. I do have a little bit of a concern because he had the Tommy John, so I don't love the idea of adding another guy like that. But Freddie Peralta, who the Yankees saw, I wouldn't be surprised if he was available at the deadline if Milwaukee doesn't end up being as good of a team as I expect them to be. And I think Peralta, 28, right-handed, arm there. He's got some really, really good stuff. I mean, the Yankees saw him. He can throw with velocity. He's got a really good changeup, really good curve. I think he could be in play there. I really do. And I think he'd be a decent option there. 3.68 ERA last year, 3.86 the year prior. Keeps his walks down, strikes out 200 a year. I mean, this is a guy that I think you're not swinging for the fences, but you're getting kind of like one of those under the radar type of guys that I think could fit well in the Bronx. Yeah,
he misses bats, and he's also not a nibbler. And I think right now this rotation's got a lot of nibbling going on, right? It's a lot of the Squidward nibbling. It's a lot of the 1-2 pitch. Oh, he tried to hit the corner, but it didn't. The 2-2, he tried to hit the corner on the other side. He didn't. The 3-2 fastball challenges him, and then we live with the results. That is what makes you go 4 innings and give up 4 runs, right? And we're taking you out and saying, what can the pen do? And then we blame it on the offense when they fall just short. Okay, that's what we're doing every single time, like clockwork. But I'll tell you this, when you look up at a pitcher and you look up his stats, right? And you see 175 innings, 165 and 2/3 innings, 173.2. When you look at that, it tells the story that this pitcher's not nibbling.
No.
Why? Because he's going deeper into games. You don't throw 175 innings a year by coming out of the game in the fourth. They don't pile up that fast. Pay attention to our arms. Pay attention to guys like Marcus Stroman. Pay attention to guys like Cookie. And you say, how many innings? I feel like he's started like 10 games this year. And you look up and it looks like 80 innings. They don't pile up that fast unless you stay in the baseball games. So I like the style. When guys give you 210 Ks, which Peralta did 2 years ago in Milwaukee, last year he had 200 Ks again. You assume he's giving you 200 Ks, 170 plus innings. That's a guy going after hitters, and it's a guy who's effective. So is he available? I have no idea. Milwaukee shouldn't have been competitive, right? These past couple of years, I think the Chicago Cubs probably thought, well, this is going to be a shoo-in. We're going to win this division. And they lose a Burns. They still go out and win, right? But at some point, Milwaukee's got to fall off the horse. Everyone's been telling me how bad they are. Perhaps this player is going to be available.
Yeah, if they fall off the horse, you get him at 28 years of age. He'll be 29 in June, right?
Yeah.
Which is really good. You get a year of control because there's a club option 2026 in that contract. So you get 1.5 years of control. It's very much a Jazz Chisholm type of deal there. That said, I think it makes a lot of sense because he's at it's pre-arbitration. He had the pre-arbitration extension, all of that. So it's like, they really kind of have to, at this point, they're going to have to pay him very soon. Because is he going to want to play for $8 million a year, with that club option? Probably not. He's probably going to want out of there. And I think he could be a really good fit in the Bronx. And I think he kind of solves an issue because you really start having to think about it. This is another year where, Garrett Cole is getting older, and Carlos Rodon is getting older, right? And, of course, they just got a guy who's in his 30s in Max Fried. Now, everybody's getting a year older. You get a guy like this, I think this makes a lot of sense. But I think he would help you now with the caveat that he could also help you, down the road if you wanted to go that route. And the whole point of going after him, because some people will be like, why not Alcantara? He is going to cost you. I love hearing this because 100%. Everyone's like, well, why not Alcantara and just don't include, stop you right there. There's no don't include. They're going to want your top 3 guys for sure, without a doubt.
I don't know, man. Miami's pretty bad at trading. Let's be real. I think you're correct in this by all the other 29 teams. Think of it this way.
Everyone's talking about him, though.
What did Miami get for Arias? Think about that.
No, that's true. But pitchers are different. And when he starts, and you have announcers saying, they're basically not even talking about this guy like he's a Miami Marlin. They're talking about him like he's this fresh meat out there for anybody to look at. It's like, oh, yeah, here's this. We'll see where he ends up pitching in August. Like, who else are they talking about like that? It's the worst kept secret in the world that he's going to get traded.
So the Marlins are like a feeder team is basically what you're telling me. It's like,
they are.
Let's go watch their talent. They're not going to win jack. And then they're going to flip this. And then the fans are going to have to go buy someone else's jersey. And Luis Soto with another super chat. Thank you, Luis. Says, my concern is not that good arms are going to be available. It's that we won't have enough to trade for them unless we give up a Lombard. So I'm going to address this right away. I think this is just clearly the position, at least my position. So I'll speak for myself. But all of these teams can get it done if they're aggressive enough, and it never costs you what you think it's going to cost. Never. It never does. Every time you look at what the Cubs sent to go get a Kyle Tucker, right? And a lot of these players, they're not that high up these lists. They're just not. They may talk about it in the hot stove MLB network. They're going to discuss it and say, well, the Yankees are going to have to send Dominguez and Volpe and all these different players. And then come to find out, you see what the trade looks like with another team. It doesn't look like that. Okay. Oh. So I completely understand. We want to acquire highly skilled players that can contribute right now in 2025. I get that. And I agree with it. It's not going to cost you the future. Don't worry about having to get rid of these players. Lombard is not going anywhere. Okay. Lombard Jr. is going to be fine. And if the Yankees want to go get a player, you can accumulate talent, stack talent on top of each other. They have plenty of talent in the system to be able to go do something. And they've had situations like this before. They've told us that the breaking point was we didn't want to send our top guy, but you know what? They had options to send multiple below that. They chose not to. So don't worry about it. I think it'll all resolve itself.
I think with Alcantara, you would have to trade Lombard because I think they would. It's the Yankee tax, which we talked about. I think they.
Oh, I don't believe in the Yankee tax. I think Brian Cashman is just. I just think he doesn't do his job to its full extent. You had at one point where he told us that Carlos. Remember when he told us that Carlos Correa, there was a Yankee tax, and then all of a sudden he signed in Minnesota for that ridiculous deal, and he goes, "Oh, I didn't know that he would have done that." You told us that he wasn't coming because of a Yankee tax, and then all of a sudden it just. We're talking about free agent here. That's how ridiculous.
No, I'm saying with the trades, I think there's a Yankee tax.
Oh, I don't believe in that.
Well, hear me out. I'm not saying that they look at it in terms of they want to get more out of the Yankees because they think the Yankees have more than other teams. I think they look at it like they're the Yankees. It's very similar to like a Boston Celtics, LA Lakers, or like what your Philadelphia Eagles are becoming. Why would you want to trade with Philly? They just won the Super Bowl. You know, why would you want to make the team
Anthony Davis for Dallas just sent for Anthony Davis. They went and sent Luka Doncic. So I don't really think you want me to tell you why I don't think there's a Yankees tax? This is actually my takeaway. Mm-hmm. I think teams like the Yankees, look at our damn fan base. Look at us. We're sitting here. What's today's date?
The 6th of April.
It is the 6th of April, and we had 1,500 people stop by our podcast to see why the Yankees couldn't beat Pittsburgh in an extra inning game. Think about that, okay? And we were sitting here talking about our rotation, and then we're going into free agency. Our fans care this much. Go look at another fan base and see how much they're talking about some April 6th game. They're not. They're not talking about it because they don't have these type of fan base. Some of them do. Some of them, maybe to a lesser extent, but most of them, not even close to this. We talk about all these trades that can possibly be available. If Alcantara becomes available, most other fan bases go, it'd be nice to get him. And they don't even talk about it. We are going to talk about it. So we look at it and say, oh, he's available? Well, we should be able to get him. And we're disappointed when we don't get somebody because of our expectations. So I don't necessarily believe in any type of Yankee tax. I just think we as a fan base, and myself included, you included, we have the nerve to think that we always should be in the mix to get the talent. And I like it that way.
Yeah, I think really the way I see it is more so I think there's certain teams that don't want to trade with the Yankees. And if they do, they don't want to just, okay, yeah, we'll take that. Like they try to get a little bit more out of them. And I don't know. I that's how I feel. But I think we disagree on that one, which is totally fine. But yeah, that's just how I feel. I think Alcantara, end of the day, I think Alcantara is a really good pitcher, but I will retain the exact thought that I had 1-2 months ago when people started talking about trading away Lombard and saying, who cares about Lombard? Just I'll send him away tomorrow for Alcantara. One, I don't think that makes you the World Series winner by getting Alcantara. Okay. It doesn't. Two, this guy is coming off a Tommy John surgery. So there's just something about trading for a guy that just went through the same arm injury that you're talking about with Garrett Cole. And I just felt like it was a very overreactionary type of thing to talk about. Now, I understand it now, but I think not even letting it play out, though, was my issue. And I still think finding that, second to third tier and letting Matt Blake work his magic with those type of guys, as opposed to going after the top guy, giving up top value and trading more than you need to. I will always go with the second and third tier and Matt Blake. That is the benefit of having a pitching coach like him. He's done wonders with a lot of nothing, right? I mean, Luke Weaver was not even a thought about dude. Then now all of a sudden he's just a completely different pitcher.
Yeah.
So when you can do that, you can also do that with starting pitchers. And I understand the pushback on this, Gary. It's very simple. It will be, well, You said that with Luis Castillo, and they got, the second, third tier guy in Frankie Montas, and how'd that work out? And I'd say, well, I wasn't a fan of that either, because for the same reason why I'm kind of iffy on Alcantara, because the injuries, I was saying the same thing about Montas because he had all those injuries. And sure enough, that ended up being a problem. So
yeah, they've got to put that together first. I mean, you can't just say, okay, here's what it is. Okay. The 2020 season from Alcantara, he was dominant. Okay.
Yeah.
He only pitched 7 times. In 2021, he was dominant. 2022, dominant. He shows up, gets hurt. Okay. And you're talking about now a 4.14 ERA, which it's not horrible, but obviously he's coming back from what he's trying to recover from. And you're now talking about missing the 2024 season. Okay. You miss that season and he comes back and his ERA is still 3.72. He's still coming back. There's a risk there. I'm not making any trade with one of my top prospects for a guy who's a risk. I want a sure thing. I want a sure thing off of a bad team. He's on a bad team, but he's not a sure thing. I'm here to tell you right now, not all of these guys recover from these injuries. You only hear about the good ones. You don't hear about the bad ones. You don't. There are a lot of guys who have pitched in this league who had arm problems and they were off of a cliff the following season. Now, most of these players, I will say this is probably, I'm going to extend an olive branch here for the people who say no, Alcantara, this is a fine risk to take. Most of these players have dealt with injury. Most of them. And that doesn't necessarily just absolve the risk, but who doesn't have Tommy John at this point? Luis Heel, forearm tightness, right? We heard that last year. Come into this year, okay, he had an oblique strain. Garrett Cole, last year, forearm tightness. This year, Tommy John, okay? We saw that with Schmidt as well. Yeah. You see it a lot with these arms. When you're throwing 96, when you're throwing 98, and the ball's moving the way that it moves and you end up on Pitching Ninja, that's for a reason, okay? It's not easy on the body. There's a reason all these guys are getting hurt. Everyone's saying, what's the issue? The issue is the velocity. Guys, I'm here to tell you right now, throwing the ball 91, okay? What Will Warren was doing today, 91, 92, 4-seam here, straight change up there, sweeper, much easier to stay on the field than when you're throwing 102. I mean, isn't that obvious? So when you're looking at someone like Sandy Alcantara, you need to make sure he is a finished product. This is sort of what I told people to finish this out. What I saw with Walker Buehler. Walker Buehler finished the season. He was struggling all last year. Why? Major injury, right? Major injury with Tommy John. Now you come into this season. We're now a second season off of Tommy John. You should feel a little bit more confident in this player where he goes and signs with Boston. So having said this, I need to see more from Sandy. I do. I need to see more from this guy. And if he's healthy going into the break, and I'm looking at a pitcher who potentially is knocking at the door of going to the All-Star game, and you're talking about that caliber, maybe I'll open the door for a conversation on some of our better prospects. But until then, I'm not taking a risk on a dude who's nearing 30 years old, who's coming off major injury. I don't see it.
Completely agree. And then you'll get, people say, well, why don't you offer him Ben Haas and Cunningham and Arias? And it's like, why would the Marlins accept that? They'll just wait. They'll bank on, basically they're all in on Alcantara turning this thing around, looking like Alcantara is supposed to look like. And then when his stock is the highest and they wait long enough, because the deadline, it gives teams long enough to really go through most of the season, figure out what they don't have for that second half run. And that's the thing. So it's all stock game. At the end of the day, that's why teams wait. Like when people are like, well, they ran out of time at the deadline. And it's funny when you don't really think about it. You're like, how'd they run out of time? You could have traded any time between the beginning of the season. And no, the whole point is it's a stock game. So, it sounds funny, but it's the same thing with like, you don't have Black Friday every day, right? You have it on that one specific day. Obviously that's a horrible example because now there's sales everywhere. But point being is that in that moment, now you have time, a race against the clock like this idea where you can't really upgrade the roster like you used to be able to with trade waivers. They've kind of eliminated that. Well, now this is the last chance to, as I like to say, get good. So when you have these opportunities, man, you're trying to make these trades, but you're also fighting against other teams. It's why some of these teams will tend to hold out until that final bell, because they're essentially trying to make it so, oh yeah, there's a huge demand on Sandy Alcantara. We got about 6 teams, and someone, offers you their top prospects. Like, no, we're going to need more than that, because the other guy just offered me number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. And that's where you get the Luis Castillo trade when he went from the Reds to Seattle. A lot of teams were in on that. They end up with the top 4 prospects from Seattle. So the whole point here is that a lot of Yankee fans will say, well, why don't you just try and buy low on him? There's no buying low. This is what the Marlins have been doing for years, and it's why Derek Jeter's no longer there, because he didn't want to be a part of this any longer. He tried to turn them around and change that whole philosophy, but the Marlins, the reality is they grow these prospects. People go to the ballpark to watch Sandy Alcantara. They're so excited because they followed him in, AAA or whatever, and then they get traded away for new prospects, and it's a nonstop circle of life, making other teams around them better. That is who the Marlins are, whether you like it or not. So, no, they will not be buying low, because the Marlins will not be selling low. They're always going to sell high, and that's what's going to happen here. So it was a bad trade for Jazz. It was a bad trade for,
Arias.
Yeah. But they're not doing it with this guy, because we're talking, Alcantara is like the prized possession that they've had. They have been chomping at the bit. They are so excited to trade him away, but they're not going to just be rushing to trade him away for scraps.
Yeah, okay, so this is the final thing I'm going to say, and then we can obviously wrap this show soon, because, I mean, we did lose to Pittsburgh, so we're not going too long. Yeah. But let me say this about Sandy. The one thing that is going to make him supremely valuable, and I want Yankees fans to hear this, because I don't really give a rip what the other fans are hearing. When you look at value, how valuable is this player that we're trading for, or trying to trade, or wanting to trade for? How valuable is that guy? Should I be sending young players? Should I be sending some of my best prospects? And to help you answer that question, I really think, Jake, and this is a conversation I think people need to hear, contract. What does his money look like? Okay. And for a team, especially the Yankees, who we now know operate under a strict budget, you look at a team that doesn't really want to float past 300 million. We know that. Okay. It's a lot of money, but the Yankees won't get better all costs necessary. They won't. Okay. I'm just here to tell you. But do you know how much I don't know if you've looked already. Do you know how much Sandy Alcantara makes in comparison to a player already on her roster who none of us would consider, when healthy, one of our best 5 pitchers? And that player being Marcus Stroman, making $18.5 million. He makes $17.3 million a year. So when you talk about value, you're not just getting Sandy, you're getting Sandy Alcantara with that money. There's value in that. Remember, we had this conversation about Jose Ramirez, right? And people said, well, what's it going to take for teams to pry him away from that small market organization and get him to the Dodgers, get him to the Yankees, get him to the Red Sox or the Mets? And they said nothing. Nothing's going to get us to trade him. Why? Because he agreed to a contract that doesn't look like Juan Soto's. It doesn't look like Shohei Ohtani's 400, 500 million. It's not going to look like Kyle Tucker's contract this offseason. So when you look at these players and you see a player sign for a 5-year, $56 million contract, and he's got the type of talent, right? The type of upside, you're taking a risk, of course, because if Sandy Alcantara doesn't return to form, the trade is pointless. It doesn't matter what you're paying somebody if they don't perform. But if he does, now you have somebody at the top of your rotation making close to really what we were paying Luis Severino when he was a Yankee. So there is huge risk here, huge reward. I wouldn't want to make this call. I wouldn't. I just wouldn't. But if the Yankees pull the trigger on something like this, if they ever have an opportunity to do something like this, I'm not going to blame them for doing it.
I'm not either. I just would like to see them retain Lombard. I've already, subscribed to the idea that Spencer Jones is going to be used as trade bait. If you're going to go after Kyle Tucker, Spencer Jones likely isn't going to be in the equation, right? Because you have Judge, you have Jason Dominguez, right? And you got Pereira. Like, I definitely could see them moving on from him. But at any rate, and Bellinger, of course. But at any rate, I actually stand by. I think Freddie Peralta makes way too much sense. But again, you're not going to be able to trade for him right now because Milwaukee has to know what they're dealing with. They're not going to like sell the season this early on just because they got, mollywopped by the Yankees.
No, this is deadline time for sure.
Yeah. So keep an eye on, like I said, keep an eye on Peralta. Keep an eye on Alcantara. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if they made a trade for him. I think Peralta makes the most sense. He's younger. He would cost less next year. But I think you got a movie to, is that what you're doing right now? Looking up a movie?
Yep. But I actually just thought of it while I was typing. I'm a 2-finger typer. So,
oh, yeah.
For those of you who ever see me typing, I literally reach out. I'm just sitting there typing.
It's so obvious when you're typing. It's hilarious.
I know. Yeah, whatever. So, anyway, what's the movie? Oh, the movie. Okay. And for those of you who are just joining our show, maybe haven't, please make sure you like and subscribe for our channel. We really appreciate the support.
And if you're on Twitter, be sure to head on over to YouTube and subscribe. Yep. It helps us out.
Yeah, I've been told people don't like doing that. I don't know why. It's not a very long trip to make, but I don't know. Neither here nor there. The movie, and don't drop it in now because this is the live chat. I mean, obviously we read that stuff, but wait till we're gone. Go back into the video and drop Minecraft. I saw that movie was coming out with Jack Black. I've never played Minecraft. I don't understand the hype, but I'm buying in. I'm seeing the movie. So if it's good, it's good. If it's not, I guess I wasted $28 and some tax. So what can you do?
So after this, type Minecraft to let us know that you stuck around. But that's going to do it. Be sure to like, subscribe, type Minecraft after this thing ends to show us that you stuck around for the full time. And we'll see you guys in the next one.
Thank you, Alex, and like this video.